All right, settle in, everyone. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that, well, it's really fundamental if you want to sound confident in English conversations. And honestly, just feel like you're properly participating. We are doing a deep dive into how to express your opinions clearly.
That's right. And it sounds simple, maybe, but think about how much of our daily communication actually involves this. Sharing what you think, what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Casual chats, work meetings.
Exactly. Class discussions, even just, reading comments online. Somewhere, someone's going to ask, so what do you think about whatever it is?
And that moment right there, and that's where, based on the material we've looked at, a lot of English learners seem to kind of hit a wall.
Yeah, it's a really common sticking point.
You might have the grammar down, you might know plenty of words, but when that specific question hits, what's your take on this new plan? Or, did you like the movie?
Yeah.
You can just freeze up.
Or you fall back on the same old phrase, maybe. Like just, I think. Over and over again.
Yeah, or you give those really short answers. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Even when you do know, or you do have an opinion.
Exactly. And that briefness, while totally understandable when you feel put on the spot, it often doesn't quite cut it in English-speaking context, does it? There's often this expectation.
Yeah, an expectation that you'll elaborate a bit, not just give the verdict, but maybe share a little bit of the why behind it. Why did you like it? Why do you think that way?
Right. The reasons, the examples, that's what gives your opinion weight.
And makes it part of a conversation, not just a statement hanging in the air.
Totally. Saying, that new cafe is good is fine, but doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
But if you can say why it's good, the coffee was amazing, or they had this really comfy armchair, or actually the service was super quick.
Then you give the other person something real to respond to. They can say, oh, really? I need good service, or what kind of coffee did they have?
Exactly. It opens things up. So our mission today in this deep dive is to really unpack how opinion expression works based on the sources we've studied.
We want to equip you with the actual language tools, the phrases, but also the sort of structural know-how.
Yeah, how to confidently state your opinion, crucially, how to back it up with reasons, and then how to handle agreeing or disagreeing without, making things awkward.
Smoothly and politely. That's the goal.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's peel back those layers.
Well, the first step has to be just getting the opinion out there clearly, right?
Yeah.
Making that opening move. How do you signal, okay, here comes my perspective?
Perfect. Let's unpack that. Because just launching straight into it can sometimes feel a little blunt.
Yeah, maybe a bit abrupt. Using an introductory phrase is like putting up a little signpost.
Right. Opinion incoming.
Exactly. It prepares the listener. It adds a bit of structure, maybe even a touch of formality or consideration, depending on the phrase.
It shows you're organizing your thoughts.
Absolutely. You're framing it. It's not a fact you're stating. It's your viewpoint. And while, I think is the absolute go-to, and it's fine a lot of the time.
Especially casually, yeah?
For sure.
Yeah.
But having other options just makes your language richer, more precise. You can sound more nuanced or more emphatic if you need to.
And the material we looked through gave a really good set of these core phrases, didn't it? Not too many to be overwhelming, but a solid toolkit.
Yeah, a good core group. Let's run through some of the main ones they highlighted.
Okay.
So first up, the absolute classic, in my opinion.
Can't go wrong with that one.
Pretty much. Straightforward, everyone understands it, works in almost any situation, casual or formal. It's the gold standard for just clearly marking something as your view.
Okay, what else?
Then there's, I personally believe that, adding that personally gives it a bit more emphasis, maybe?
Yeah, it feels a bit stronger, like, this is my conviction.
Exactly. It signals this might be a deeply held belief, maybe even if others don't share it. Highlights the individual perspective.
Okay, makes sense.
Then you've got from my point of view. This one's interesting. It kind of suggests your opinion is shaped by your specific angle, right? Your background, your experience.
So it sort of implies that others might see it differently from their point of view.
Precisely. Which can actually be a really useful, quite gentle way to introduce an idea that might contrast with someone else's. You're not saying they're wrong, just that your perspective leads you elsewhere.
I like that. It's inherently acknowledging other views exist. Okay, next.
I would say that this one often comes across as a little softer, maybe more cautious.
Like you're not stating it as a hard fact, but offering it up.
Yeah, exactly. Or perhaps you're not 100% certain, or you just want to sound a bit more tentative, maybe more collaborative in a discussion. It avoids sounding too forceful.
Good for hedging slightly, maybe?
And And the last one on this core list was, as far as I'm concerned.
Ooh, okay. How does that one work?
This one often narrows the focus. It implies your opinion is maybe limited to the specific aspect you're discussing, or that this particular point is what really matters to you. So it can signal what you prioritize.
Yes. It can sometimes subtly imply you don't care as much about other facets, or that this is your strong feeling on this specific issue. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the main issue is the budget. You're zeroing in on the cost.
Got it. Okay, those are 5 really useful, distinct ways to just start your opinion. Each has a slightly different flavor.
Absolutely.
The material used that example about learning English online. What do you think about learning English online? Let's see how these phrases change the feel.
Okay, good idea. So you're asked that question instead of just, it's good, which is, fine but flat.
Right.
Using the classic, in my opinion, online learning is great because it's flexible and convenient. Simple, clear. Phrase, opinion, reason follows naturally.
Okay, straightforward. What if you used I personally believe?
Maybe something like, I personally believe that learning English online is very effective, but it also requires a lot of self-discipline. See how personally believe pairs well with maybe a stronger statement or one with a condition attached? Yeah, that works. It feels like you're stating a conviction but acknowledging a challenge. And from my point of view...
That one might lead you to talk about your experience. From my point of view, especially having young kids at home, online learning was a lifesaver because I could study whenever I had a spare moment.
Ah, okay. So the point of view directly connects to your personal situation. Nice.
And the softer, I would say?
How would that sound?
Maybe more considered. Interesting question. I would say that online learning can be really good, but it heavily depends on the quality of the course and the teacher's engagement. Using, I would say, and adding those conditions makes it sound less like a blanket statement.
Right. More nuanced. And as far as I'm concerned...
You might use that to focus on one key aspect. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest advantage of online learning is the access it gives you to native speaker teachers from anywhere in the world. You're highlighting that specific benefit as the most important one for you.
Wow. Okay. Just switching that opening phrase really does shift the tone and the emphasis, doesn't it?
It really does. It's more than just vocabulary. It's about positioning your statement. It makes you sound more structured, more thoughtful.
More intentional.
Yes, exactly. Intentional.
Okay, so we've framed the opinion. We've used a good introductory phrase. But as we said at the start, that's often not enough.
Nope. Step 2 is crucial.
Backing it up. Giving reasons. The material really stressed this, didn't it?
Yeah.
Why is adding the why so important in English?
It's fundamental, really. Just dropping an opinion without any support can sound, well, a bit empty, maybe even arrogant, depending on the context. Like you're just declaring something true without justification.
Right, like my word is final.
Yeah. Providing reasons or examples does a few key things. That makes your opinion more credible, shows you've thought about it. It makes it more persuasive, you're giving evidence.
And crucially for conversation.
It gives the other person something specific to latch onto, to agree with, disagree with, ask more about. It turns your statement into an actual contribution.
It invites interaction rather than just being a dead end.
Exactly. And the sources gave us some key phrases for actually linking the opinion to the reason to make that connection really clear and smooth.
Yeah, the linguistic glue, as you called it. What were some of those?
Okay, some core ones. The reason I think that is because this one is very explicit, very clear, leaves no doubt that what follows is the justification.
Quite formal sounding, maybe?
Can be, or just very deliberate. A more conversational, super common one is just, that's because. You hear this all the time. Directly links the reason to what you just said.
Okay, nice and simple.
Then, if you have multiple points, one reason for this is great for structuring your support. One reason is X, another reason is Y.
Helps you organize your thoughts, especially if it's a complex issue.
And absolutely essential. For example. Or you could use, for instance. This signals you're moving from a general point to a specific illustration. Examples make things concrete.
So important. Let's use that other example from the material. Do you think watching TV is a good way to learn English?
Okay, simple yes isn't very helpful. Let's add some support. Right. Using because. Yes, I definitely think watching TV helps because you get exposed to how people actually speak, the rhythm, the slang, things you don't get in textbooks.
Much better. You've explained the how. What about using one reason?
You could expand. Yes, it's useful. One reason for this is it significantly improves your listening skills, especially with different accents. Another reason is vocabulary. You pick up words in context.
Nice. Building the case point by point. And how would, for example, fit in there?
You could add it after a point. It really helps with vocabulary. For example, I learned a ton of cooking words just from watching cooking shows, or it helps understand culture. For example, watching sitcoms shows you common social situations and humor.
So you make the general point, then give a specific instance. That makes it so much clearer and more convincing.
Absolutely. It grounds the opinion in reality. It's the difference between travel is good and travel is good because it exposes you to new perspectives. For example, when I visited Japan, seeing their approach to public transport completely changed how I thought about efficiency.
Yeah, the second one is way more impactful and interesting. You learn something from the speaker.
Exactly. It shares an experience, not just an assertion.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. State the opinion clearly with a good phrase, then immediately provide the why, using linking words and maybe a specific example.
That's the core structure for a strong, well-supported opinion.
Right, but conversations, as we know, aren't just about broadcasting your own views.
Definitely not. You're usually reacting to what someone else says.
Which brings us to the next crucial area, agreeing and disagreeing. And this is where it can get tricky, culturally speaking.
Very much so. How you agree, and especially how you disagree, can really affect how people perceive you in English-speaking cultures. Politeness is often key.
Yeah, the sources stress that blunt disagreement, just flat out no, you're wrong, can often be seen as rude or confrontational, right? Especially in work settings or more formal situations.
Absolutely. So learning the phrases for navigating this politely is a vital social skill, not just a language skill.
Okay, let's start with the easier side. Agreement. How can we show we're totally on board with someone's point?
When you fully agree, you want clear signals. The material gave some great options. I completely agree with you. Simple, direct, leaves no doubt.
The baseline.
Yep, or to add a bit more warmth. That's a really good point. This praises their contribution while agreeing, shows you appreciate their insight.
Nice. Builds rapport.
Also, I see what you mean. This shows you understand their reasoning, and in the context of responding to an opinion you share, it strongly implies agreement, like, ah, yes, I followed your logic and arrived there too.
Okay. And a simpler one.
I think so too. More casual, great for everyday stuff. This coffee is great. Yeah, I think so too.
Got it. So those are for full agreement, but often it's not black and white, is it? You might agree with part of what someone said, but not all of it. Or you agree, but want to add a condition.
Exactly. This partial agreement is super common and incredibly useful for nuanced conversation. It's about finding common ground before introducing your difference.
Shows respect for their view first.
Precisely. It softens the disagreement that might follow. The sources provided some excellent phrases for this. I see your point, but. The classic structure, acknowledge, I see your point, then pivot, but.
I hear you, however.
Exactly. Another one. That's true, but I also think that. Similar logic. Validate their point, that's true. Then add your perspective, but I also think so.
Okay.
And maybe more explicit about the degree of agreement. I agree to some extent, but this clearly signals you're not 100% aligned, but you see merit in their point up to a certain level.
Let's use that fast food example again. Someone says fast food is terrible for your health. How would partial agreement sound?
Okay, strong statement. Instead of just arguing, you could say, I see your point. Fast food can definitely be unhealthy if you eat it all the time, but I think it's probably okay occasionally, in moderation.
Okay. You acknowledge the truth in their statement first, can be unhealthy, before adding your condition, in moderation, much smoother.
Right. Or using, that's true. That's true. A lot of it is high in calories and fat, but I also think that sometimes it's just incredibly convenient when you're short on time.
Again, validate, then add your different angle convenience. It keeps the conversation open.
Exactly. It respects their point while allowing you to introduce complexity.
This is so useful. Now, for the really tricky bit, polite disagreement. When you just fundamentally see it differently, how do you say that without sounding like you're attacking them?
This is where cultural sensitivity really matters. As we said, bluntness is often avoided. The goal is to state your different view gently. The material suggested these kinds of phrases. I'm not sure I agree with that. This is quite indirect. It frames the disagreement as your uncertainty, not their error. It's softer than I disagree.
Puts the onus on yourself.
Kinda, yeah. Another good one. I see things a little differently. I like this one. It uses a metaphor, different perspectives on the same issue. It implies no one is wrong, just that your angles diverge.
Invites them to hear your perspective, too.
Exactly, and it's slightly more direct, but still polite. Actually, I have a different opinion on that. The word actually here often softens the contrast. It signals a differing view is coming, but less abruptly than just launching into it.
It's interesting that none of them start with a harsh no. They all create a bit of distance first.
That's the key. Politeness, maintaining the relationship, keeping the conversation flowing, these often take priority over blunt assertion of being right in many English-speaking contexts. Mastering these softeners is crucial.
Definitely. Okay, this whole breakdown of stating, supporting, agreeing, and disagreeing feels very practical. Let's zoom out now and touch on the cultural context the material mentioned, especially for places like the US and UK.
Yes, because why we need these phrases is partly cultural. In many Western cultures, like the US and UK, having and expressing opinions is generally seen as a good thing. It's expected.
Part of active participation.
Yeah, shows engagement, critical thinking. It's not typically considered rude just to have an opinion, as long as you express it respectfully using the kind of politeness strategies we've discussed.
So if your background is from a culture where maybe direct opinions, especially disagreements, are avoided to maintain harmony,
Then you might need to consciously adapt. You need to be prepared not just with the phrases, but with the idea that offering your perspective, even if different, is often welcomed and expected.
the material mentioned that direct but polite style in the US-UK.
Yeah.
Like, I disagree, and here's why.
Right. The I disagree might be direct, but it's immediately softened or justified by the reasoning. Here's why. It focuses the disagreement on the idea, not the person. This might feel quite different from cultures where any direct no is avoided.
Like that other strategy mentioned saying something like, that's an interesting idea first.
Exactly. That's an interesting idea. Can be a polite placeholder. It acknowledges you heard them, gives you a moment to think, and can serve as a very soft prelude to introducing your own possibly contrasting view without ever saying, I disagree or that's wrong.
A kind of conversational buffer.
Precisely. It's a strategy focused on maintaining a smooth, agreeable atmosphere, which is highly valued in some cultures. It shows how deeply language choices are tied to cultural norms about interaction.
And this politeness factor really ramps up in professional settings, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The workplace context demands another level of care, usually. While opinions and critical thinking are vital for business, teamwork and respect are paramount. Anything sounding too confrontational can harm collaboration.
So you definitely wouldn't say your plan is bad in a meeting.
Definitely not. You'd use much softer, more collaborative language. The source gave that great example. Instead of you're wrong, using something like, let's look at this from a different angle.
I love that phrase. It's so constructive.
Isn't it? It doesn't attack the original idea. It suggests adding perspectives, exploring alternatives together. Let us look. It frames it as a shared problem-solving effort.
What are some other phrases like that for professional disagreement?
You might hear things like, have we considered the potential impact on X? Or my main concern with that approach would be Y. Or even, could we perhaps explore an alternative like Z?
They all gently introduce a problem or an alternative without direct criticism.
Exactly. They focus on the issue, the potential consequences, or alternative solutions, rather than making it personal or adversarial. Fosters that productive, respectful environment the sources mentioned.
That's such a key insight. It's not just what opinion you have, but tailoring how you express it to the specific situation. Casual chat, formal meeting, cultural context. It's about communication effectiveness, not just grammatical correctness.
It really is. It's about social intelligence and relationship management all through language.
This has been incredibly helpful. Breaking it all down, we've got the tools now. Stating, reasoning, agreeing, disagreeing, understanding the context. To really make it stick, though, we need to practice.
Absolutely. Theory is one thing, using it is another. The material had a neat little challenge task for that.
Let's share that.
Okay, it's designed to be simple and immediate. Step 1. Pick a basic question nearing an opinion. The example used was perfect. Do you think smartphones are good or bad? Everyone has thoughts on that.
Okay, got the question. Step 2.
State your opinion using one of those introductory phrases we talked about. Don't just say good or bad. Frame it. In my opinion, I personally believe, from my point of view.
Right. And step 3.
Back it up. Provide at least one reason and maybe an example using those linking phrases because one reason is, for example.
Okay, so let's try putting that together for the smartphone question if you think you're generally good.
You might say, in my opinion, smartphones are incredibly useful tools because they give us instant access to so much information. For example, I use mine constantly for navigation, checking weather, and quick translations when I travel.
Nice. Intro phrase, reason linked with because. Specific examples. Covers all the bases. And if you lean towards thinking they're bad or have negative aspects,
You could use a different structure. I personally believe smartphones can be quite detrimental, mainly because they encourage constant distraction. One clear reason for this is the nonstop notifications that pull your attention away from whatever you're trying to focus on.
excellent. Different opener, I personally believe. Linking with because, then elaborating with one reason for this is, and identifying the mechanism, notifications. Both are solid, supported opinions.
And that's the goal, to build that complete thought unit. Opinion plus support.
So the challenge for you listening is try this yourself. Pick a topic you actually care about. Could be movies, food, your city, a hobby, anything.
Something you genuinely have an opinion on.
Yeah. And then try formulating your opinion out loud or write it down. Use an introductory phrase, state your view, and then consciously add a because or a for example to explain why you think that.
It might feel a bit mechanical at first, but doing it deliberately helps embed the pattern. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Absolutely. And speaking of practice, just looking ahead, the material we reviewed also sets us up nicely for our next deep dive.
Ah, yes, another really practical one.
We'll be tackling some of those common grammar mistakes that English learners often make, and crucially, focusing on how to spot them and fix them.
Which is super helpful because sometimes small grammar tweaks can make a huge difference in clarity and how fluent you sound.
Definitely looking forward to that.
Me too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on opinions, the big takeaway really is that expressing yourself effectively in English goes way beyond just knowing the words for good or bad.
It's about structure, strategy, and sensitivity.
Yeah, structuring your thought with an opening phrase, strategically backing it up with reasons and examples, and sensitively navigating agreement and disagreement based on the context and culture.
The phrases and insights we've discussed today are tools. Pick them up, try them out, listen for them when you hear native speakers interacting. How do they do it?
Notice how people cushion disagreements or how they elaborate on their points. You'll start seeing these patterns everywhere once you look for them.
And every time you consciously choose a phrase like, from my point of view, or you push yourself to explain why you like that film using because, you're strengthening that communication muscle.
It's not just about passing a test. It's about truly connecting and participating in conversations, making your voice heard clearly and confidently.
Well said. So keep talking, keep noticing, keep practicing. Enjoy the process of finding your voice in English.
Absolutely. Until our next deep dive.